Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The Coalition will oppose Labor's Future Made in Australia bill. The more we hear about this plan, the more it does not stack up. This is a plan for pork barrelling, not a strong economy. This is a plan for more government, not more business investment. Australia, of course, has a proud and strong manufacturing industry, and the Coalition has always supported it. In fact, the industry was a lot stronger just 2 years ago under the Coalition government, and we know that because during COVID-19, those COVID years, there was over 1 million jobs in manufacturing, 1 million. And right now, we hear the minister, the Albanese Labor government minister, come in and say there's 900,000 jobs in manufacturing. So that's a 10% fall in manufacturing jobs in 2 years alone. Yet the government has this new bill. They somehow want to make a future around it and get it going, but they forget to tell people that 10% of the jobs have already gone in the last 2 years. And how many more of those 900,000 jobs are currently struggling right now because of the inflationary environment and the decisions that the Albanese Labor government have made over the last 2 years. So, in order for manufacturing to continue to grow and for those businesses that are currently engaged in manufacturing and the people that they employ, it requires strong economic management, not what we're seeing from the current Labor government. It requires economic management that gets back on track and getting the basics right. Now, when I talk to manufacturers in my own electorate, and I do get around and talk to quite a few in Narangba and in Caloundra, in Clontarf, I should say, there's manufacturing businesses there that tell me that the number one issue that they require in order to be competitive is, of course, affordable and reliable energy. Now, the Prime Minister promised that before the last election in 2022 that energy would be cheaper and lower under his government. And what's happened is we've seen anything but that. So particularly made the commitment to consumers, to mum and dads, to households, that their electricity bill would fall by $275. That has been completely abandoned by the government. We never hear the Prime Minister or the Minister for Energy and Climate Change talk about that at all anymore. Completely abandoned, despite promising it almost 100 times publicly before the last election. But what's even worse, the fact that for most households energy has gone up by $1,000, is that for businesses it's actually completely doubled in many cases. Their energy bill in the last 2 years under the Albanese Labor government, and manufacturing businesses in particular, has doubled. Now, in some cases it hasn't quite doubled, but it has gone up very significantly. So it doesn't surprise me at all that if 10% of manufacturing jobs have gone in the last 2 years under this government, that would be one of the main reasons. Yet they come in here, the government, Deputy Speaker, and say that, well, we've got a plan to make energy more affordable. The Prime Minister said today in his speech on this very bill, one of the first things he said was, we're going to be, Australia, a renewable energy superpower. I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? The government continually says this, that somehow, a superpower, we're going to be up there with the United States, perhaps China. People think of superpowers generally in the military terms, but we're going to be a renewable energy superpower. Well, how come the businesses' bills have doubled? Some superpower. All we're doing is putting employees out of jobs and manufacturers out of business. We've lost 10% of them under the Albanese government. So it's a throwaway line that the Labor Party use and that this Prime Minister uses around renewable energy superpower. It means absolutely nothing. Their plan around renewable energy superpower is buying Chinese-manufactured solar panels and Chinese-manufactured wind farms and closing down Australian-mined coal and gas and not considering the option for Australian-mined uranium, when other countries around the world are considering that as well. This government comes in here and bang on for 10 years when opposition around, oh, we've got to do more for climate change, but won't consider modern nuclear power. We had the audacity of the Deputy Prime Minister come here yesterday and act like the class clown when he said, in relation to AUKUS, the coalition in relation to AUKUS was a thought bubble. I mean, please, give me a break. Give me a break. It was the Leader of the Opposition and the former Prime Minister that got AUKUS running. So we're going to have 8 modern nuclear-powered submarines around the country, but we can't have 7 modern nuclear power sites on land. And they say they're for climate change, when modern nuclear power has 0 emissions. But it's all right to buy Chinese-made wind farms. It's all right to buy Chinese-made solar panels. And according to this Prime Minister, you know, for the kids in the gallery, we're going to be a renewable energy superpower. I mean, it's just outrageous, and it's not truthful. It's not truthful. He also said we're lowering the cost of living when the manufacturers that I speak to tell me anything but, that the cost of doing business is going up considerably. And when the cost of doing business goes up, have a guess what happens? It's all passed on to goods and services that every one of us go out and buy. The people that I represent in Petrie and other electorates around this country, they go out and buy these products that businesses sell. It's all passed on. It doesn't matter whether you're ordering a parmigiana down at the local tavern or whether you're buying clothes for work or a car or whatever it may be, your power bill at home. If the cost of doing business goes up, which is what we're seeing under the Albanese Labor government, the cost for consumers goes up. So we're not a renewable energy superpower, whatever that means. This government is not lowering the cost of living. I mean, Australians know that in the last 2 years, cost of living has gone completely through the roof, completely. And so when you hear the government speak, you've got to take with a grain of salt what they're actually saying, because this government has broken election promises and can't be trusted. Deputy Speaker, in order to get manufacturing going well and to reverse the 10% of job losses that have already happened under the last 2 years under this government, we need affordable and reliable energy, and the Coalition has a plan for that. That includes renewables as well as modern nuclear power and gas. You also need a plan to make sure that workplaces are flexible. So the difference with us and the government is we don't govern and make legislation for our union donors because they don't donate to us. Unions represent about 8% of the private sector, yet the government, and particularly the Leader of the House in his new role and in his previous role, legislates for unions, what they particularly want. And when you're doing that, you're only legislating for 8% of workers in the economy. So what about the other 92%? Well, they just got to wear the extra costs, because not every workplace has the same rights that some of the unions that operate within the Labor Party have. We also see a government opposite that increases regulation. Right now, the Assistant Treasurer, the Minister that I shadow, by regulation is about to put more regulation on accountants and bookkeepers right around the country. And of course, that's just one example. At the stroke of a pen, a whole lot of new regulation so that when people are doing their tax or whatever, once again, that's additional costs. And it's the same with manufacturing. So in order to improve manufacturing and to get it back, affordable and reliable energy, which the Coalition has a plan for, flexible workplaces, so not just legislating for unions. Less regulation is absolutely key, and an incentive-based tax system, because in my electorate, a lot of the manufacturers are small and family businesses, middle-sized businesses, perhaps with maybe 50 employees, 100 employees. And you know, there have been in some cases, like businesses like Packer Leather, that's a family-run business, the only manufacturing business left in Australia pretty well that manufactures kangaroo leather for RM Williams boots and Sherrin footballs and kangaroo cricket balls and the Kubra hats. They also do a bit of work with rabbit leather and cattle. What happens there? They're being taxed more, right? So their costs have gone up. And it's even simple things, like often family businesses have super funds, self-managed super funds. Perhaps they put money into it, and now the government's come in and said, well, if you've got $3 million in your super or your business premises is owned in your super, they promised before the last election they wouldn't tax it, but now they're going to double the tax rate on super funds over $3 million and put in unrealised capital gains. So there might be a building that this manufacturer owns within their self-managed super fund, and they bought that building 30 years ago, 40 years ago for $2 million. It's now worth $10 million. Right? It's a family-owned business. This government is saying, well, everything over $3 million, we want to tax you on it. So if the building is worth $10 million, $7 million will be taxed, and not when it's sold, but right now. So it's an unrealised capital gain. And so you get manufacturers that have been in business for a long time sort of going, well, why do I bother? Why am I here working hard when the government just wants to hit me? Because that's what this government is doing, and a lot of Labor governments have done this over the years, and it often takes the coalition, the Liberal National Coalition, to come back in and to reduce regulation, to reduce tax, to make sure workplaces are flexible, not just governed for unions, and to make sure that energy is affordable. And if the government is completely serious about making sure manufacturers do well, that's an agenda that they could implement. Soaring energy prices are a pain for manufacturers all around the country. I mentioned Packer Leather, but other companies like ECB Bull Bars and Contaf, who are in my electorate. So for everyone out there with a Toyota Hilux or a Mazda BT50 or an Isuzu D-Max or a Land Cruiser or a Land Rover, often the manufacturers at Toyota and that will sell you a steel bull bar imported from overseas. In my electorate of Contaf, you can buy an aluminium bull bar that's manufactured in Contaf. And once again, they've told me their energy bill has gone up under this government. Not good for manufacturing. AJ Plastics in Geebung in the federal Cedar Lily. Since December 2022, their electricity bill per month has increased by significantly. It hasn't quite doubled, but it's gone up significantly. It was only a small manufacturing company. It was about $460 a month. It's now $750. That all adds up. It's all additional costs. So that's an increase of $3,600 per year for another manufacturer up in Brisbane. And that business said they've noticed the hit, this small plastics manufacturer. This is happening all around the country. It's not just my seat and the neighbouring seat up in Brisbane. It's all 151 seats around the country. Productivity, of course, is at a 60-year low under the Albanese government too. And you wonder why your prices have gone up. Because productivity is down almost 6% under the Albanese Labor government. And when productivity is down, if the wages are up, what's happening is wages are going up because people can't cope with the cost of living. And at the same time, so here's the business ticking along, wages up, productivity down. And we're producing less at a higher cost, and we're wondering why we're all paying more. I mean, that is what is happening in reality under the Albanese Labor government. And often that's the case because you've got a Prime Minister and you've got a Treasurer with very little experience in the private sector. I mean, before I come into this place, I'd never had a government job, never worked for a politician, never had a government job. But with the Treasurer and the Prime Minister, all they've had is government jobs. That's it. I think the Prime Minister worked in a bank for 12 months, so how would he know or consult what's best for manufacturing? How? He gets all his information from union donors. and they're writing the rules, and under this Future Made in Australia bill, they'll be the ones that win.